welcome to Season 7, Episode 285 of School Librarians United. I am your host, Amy Herman. This podcast is dedicated to the issues and challenges school librarians face every day. As a school librarian beginning my 18th year, I knew I wanted a podcast which addressed the nuts and bolts of running a successful library program. I don't claim to have the answers, but I hope that this is a platform to share resources and exchange ideas. Now is a perfect time to mention that all the ideas and opinions expressed in this podcast by myself, my interview guests, and listeners who reach out to the podcast are our own and do not reflect those of our school districts. When incorporating research, I always make sure to cite my sources. So whether you are a novice or a veteran school librarian, this podcast has something for you. Amanda Jones's upcoming book, That Librarian, will be available next week on August 27th, but you can pre-order your copy now. And if you use the indie bookseller Cavalier House Books in Amanda's hometown of Denham Springs, Louisiana, you will get a signed copy. I've included a link in the show notes. When you look at the cover of Amanda's book, you might recognize the Freedom Fighter shirt she's wearing. She reached out to the designer Christy, who then designed a line of That Librarian apparel as well as That Librarian flair, such as a bag, sticker, and mug. I love that we can all be that librarian who advocates for our library and our students' access to books every day. You'll find a link to this online store in our show notes. Please note that 15% of the proceeds go to the Texas Library Association, as that is the home state of the designer. There's a good chance some listeners tuning in are familiar with DEMCO's School Library Planner, and I'm guessing some of you have already ordered and received your copy in the mail. This passion project is very much the product of Christina Holz-Weiss's vision and conviction that school librarians deserve a planner designed with us in mind. This is the second year I was honored to be invited to contribute as one of the 53 school librarians to provide helpful tips, strategies, and resources for this planner. And fun fact, listeners will recognize now 23 of these school librarians as past guests on the podcast. It just so happens that I share a page with Lucas Maxwell, who's been on the show 5 times. I am so grateful to Christina, who spearheads this project every year. I've included a link in today's show notes. Take a look. This spiral-bound comprehensive planner includes customizable tabs, month at a glance, ample space for daily notes and goal setting, as well as resources like daily celebrations, literature awards, and forms for completing needs assessments, curriculum mapping, grant writing, book fair planning, book requests, organizing your vendors, budgeting, weeding, self-reflection prompts, professional reflections, and much, much more. Consider treating yourself to this valuable tool in making the most of this upcoming school year. I've included a link in today's show notes. I welcome you and all listeners to reach out with your feedback and episode suggestions. You can reach me on Facebook, on X, formerly known as Twitter. My handle is @LMS_United. On Threads, you can find me at School Librarians United, and on Blue Sky at SLU Podcast, or the email address schoollibrariansunited@gmail.com. If you include your mailing address, I'll be sure to send you a podcast sticker. And now a word from our sponsor, Capstone. Capstone is an innovative publisher and education technology provider of children's content for school libraries, classrooms, and at-home learning. Home of the award-winning PebbleGo Research Database, Capstone has a passion for creating inspired learning and intellectual curiosity in children, and I am so excited to be working with them. I'm also grateful to Capstone for their continued commitment to support the podcast in Season 7. They are offering listeners of School Librarians United a very special discount. Visit shop.capstonepub.com and use the code UNITED to get $20 off an order of $100 or more for both print and Capstone interactive ebooks. That's code UNITED for $20 off an order of $100 or more for both print and ebooks on shop.capstonepub.com. And now for today's episode, Mr. Library, and my conversation with Tim Jones. Friends, I'm so excited. Tim Jones, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Friends, we are in for a treat today. Tim, would you please introduce yourself, tell us where in the country you work, and a little bit about your library?
My name is Tim Jones. I am a school librarian from Kentucky. I've served in high school libraries for 13 years, but I'm currently in my second year at an elementary school in Louisville, in the 29th largest school district in the United States. My school has an enrollment of around 500 students. over 80% of our students are economically disadvantaged, which has impacted our students' proficiency levels. When I wrapped up my school last year, our library collection was 14 years old, about 4 years behind where a school library collection needs to be. So my big project last year was weeding and updating our collection. And now our collection is 9.5 years old. So we made up some ground. I've added some technology and makerspace items, including coding toys, 3D pens, a drone, button maker with plans to add more stuff. The district just gifted several libraries in our district some Strawbees Imagination kits, and I can't wait to share those with our kiddos. I've also researched grants, and I'm still waiting to hear back on when I've applied for. Yes.
Well, and I'm so impressed. You've already been in school now for 2 weeks. I've yet to start. So we're on slightly different calendars. So I appreciate this because while I don't see students tomorrow, I'm going to go in and sort of see what's waiting for me after 6 weeks of summer school and so forth. But you're going back to a busy week of school. You're starting it up, and that's a lot to think about. It sounds like in the short time that you've been in your elementary library, you have made some huge, improvements in just the programming that you're able to offer to your students, as well as the collection building. That does take time.
Yes, and it's also just a huge learning curve going from high school for 10 years to elementary. It's a huge learning curve, and this is just like there's like the learning curve of just going from knowing people at your school to like just learning the new staff, new students, the hierarchy, who to talk to get what done. And so like doing all that in terms of, and also a new district. So like there was a lot of just learning curve last year.
Can I ask, so when you were at the high school, I'm assuming you were on a flexible schedule.
Yes.
Are you on a fixed schedule in your elementary school?
Yes, I am. Yes. I've got 6 classes a day. See, last year we would see like everybody in the school like within 3 days, but this year they've changed it to we have the same 6 classes for 5 days in a row, which with our population is probably best for them because they get some consistency. That's really great for them because otherwise they'll try you, like if they know like they can get away with it for like 3 days and then, but like with this population, like they love getting to be able to get to know you, get to see what you're about, feel loved, and have that for 5 straight days. And during that time, like I have plenty of opportunities to get to know them and put names with faces a little bit easier because it's hard for teachers too to like only see them like every few days or so. Like being able to see them 5 days in a row is really helpful.
So I was one of those librarians who required seating charts. And I had the photos from the, we could pull up their school photo and I could create a photo seating chart just because I was terrible with names. So I have to ask, I've always seen you identified as Mr. Library. Do your littles call you Mr. Library?
No.
You're Mr. Jones, huh?
I'm Mr. Jones, yes.
Got it. Well, I appreciate that's an amazing transition. I will say the biggest shock that I remember going to the elementary is just your circ stats, because you had all these classes coming in and out all day long. Your circ stats were fantastic. At the high school, I never could get those kinds of circ stats. It didn't matter how hard I tried.
Yeah, you have to try everything. And the high school I was at for 9 years, it was an all-male private high school. And so even harder, getting guys who are very interested in sports mostly to also find time for reading and making that cool.
Well, I give you a lot of credit for moving to a new school district, a new age group. That's fantastic. You're incredibly accomplished, and I'm sorry that it has taken us this long to schedule this interview. And I hope to learn more about all the amazing things that you have done throughout your career as a librarian. Before we get started, I learned something fun about you, and I've never, ever worked with somebody who has ever worked at Second City in Chicago.
All right. Well, it's funny you to ask me about that because I don't even know how you even learned about it. But before I even thought about becoming a librarian, I wanted to be a writer and a comedian. So I did sketch and improv comedy way back in college. So around 2005, give or take a year, I can't remember exactly, I moved up to Chicagoland to pursue my comedy dreams. For those unfamiliar with Second City, you obviously are, but some might not be. Second City, it's a training center where a ton of big names and little names like me got their start producing comedy. Chris Farley, Bill Murray, Tina Fey, Dan Aykroyd, Eugene Levy, Mike Myers, Bob Odenkirk, Amy Sedaris, Steve Carell, Stephen Colbert, Rachel Dratch, Tim Robinson, John Belushi, and the list goes on and on and on and on. And then there's me somewhere at the bottom. And that's just Chicago. There's also a training center in Toronto. So I went through Second City Chicago's writing program. They have a writing program as well as their improv. They're more known for the improv, but I went through the writing program. At the end of that program, I served as assistant director on a 5-week run of comedy review that I co-wrote with my program classmates. Then I spent time in a program at another training center called The Annoyance, learning improvisation. Because there are 3 major training centers. There's Second City, IO, and The Annoyance. And there's other ones, but those are the major 3. So I graduated 2 different comedy training centers in Chicago, but that didn't pay my bills. So while I was up there, I wound up getting a job as a high school library clerk, and I just loved it. And I realized librarianship was my jam. So then I moved back to Kentucky, went to library school, and the rest, as they say, is history. I've now been in librarianship for 18 years, but I learned a lot with Second City and The Annoyance that I've adapted in my career as a librarian and business owner. There's a whole lot of improvisation, observation, active listening, collaboration, playfulness, empathy, intellectual curiosity, and public speaking across both of those roles. So yes, a lot of yes and too, especially when building a welcoming, safe environment like a school library.
Well, and I imagine that just having that sort of stage presence and that awareness of an audience might help you,
yes,
anticipate your crowd. And hopefully, I got to tell you, the students can be a real tough crowd. and I was like, wow, that's great training for when you become a teacher. Well, I will just say, as a parent, we have taken our adult children to Second City in Chicago and Second City in Toronto, and it really is a lot of fun. My kids get called up on stage, and I would highly recommend it. And definitely make sure that your kids are more, let's say, north of 15 years old. North of 15 years old, they're likely to enjoy it a little bit more. Congratulations. This spring, you, one of the movers and shakers of the class of 2024. Can you give us an idea of what it is? And friends, I've included a link in the show notes. And, Tim, I'm very frank with anybody who asks me. I nominated myself. I'm a community builder, and I was thrilled. I put that on my little professional signature at school. Can you give us an idea what it was the award committee saw in your profile this year to get Mover and Shaker?
Well, to be recognized by Library Journal in the first place was really just an honor. It was revealed in May, and I'm still pinching myself, and it's on August. I'm just like, really? What, me? Really? Okay. From what I understand, from based on the questions they asked me during the interview prior to the article, and then once I read the article, there were a lot of things that were sent in with my application. A fellow Library Journal, Mover and Shaker, nominated me, but I may have asked him to help me out a little bit. But what the article was based on was my work as a school librarian teaching media literacy and also fighting for intellectual freedom. So I was in the band battler category, which was the inaugural year for that. And there are tons of librarians that I feel like, in terms of that category, probably deserved it more. But I kind of felt like my application was kind of like a hodgepodge of a lot of different things. They probably could have put me in multiple places, and they just decided to put me there, I guess. I think one of the reasons I was put there, even though it's not in the article, was that I did do some work with trying to fight for intellectual freedom in Philadelphia when I was up there for ISTE the year before this one. I presented at ISTE, and then Moms for
Liberty. Yes.
Yes. They were in town for their summit the next day. So I decided to stick around because my family had already planned a vacation to go from Philadelphia to New York to Boston, just kind of have a nice, East Coast tour. And then when I found out about the summit, and I was like, I can't, as a librarian, not go to this thing.
Right. And I remember the two were really sort of overlapping by a day. And so there was discussion about being a presence.
Right. Yes. And so while I was up there, I had previously designed some eraselets with my company, Nimco. These are like eraselets, which are like bracelets that erase. And so I had slogans on them like erase book bans and erase censorship, kind of a play on words with the whole erase thing. And so I gave those out for free at like the different Read Freely rallies and so forth. And so that was also part of the application, even though it didn't make it into the article, but there was enough in there.
Absolutely. Well, and I'm awfully curious because when it comes to standing out from other candidates, when you use something as clever as the resources that you happen to have, and we're going to talk a little bit about that because you are both a librarian, you also have a business, and you have been able to marry the two in such a way that it really does turn into a voice for advocacy when it comes to the messaging that and we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the messaging that you've been able to promote with your company. So let's, congratulations, you're a mover and shaker, which is really cool. And again, friends, and I'll be very honest, nobody nominated me. I nominated myself. And, open up the application, take a look at it. And honestly, there's nothing to discourage you from doing just that. And you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And I will thank Amanda Jones for that advice because it is incredibly relevant when it comes to making sure people see us and all the amazing things that we do when it comes to our profession. So let's talk about, the awards just keep on coming. You were Kentucky's 2022 School Librarian of the Year. And was this when you were still at the high school?
Yes.
So do tell, what was it in that case that got the attention of the awards committee?
All right. So I'm not exactly sure what set me apart from the other nominees that year, but just like most states, there are so many worthy school librarians every year, and Kentucky is no exception. I could go down a list of Kentucky school librarians I know who are doing just incredible, phenomenal work. And not all of them are on social media, so they're not all tooting their own horns publicly. But there's just so many who just do an amazing job. So they're changing students' lives. They're collaborating with teachers, volunteering their time with local and state associations. Just tons of great librarians. That said, I think what caught the eye of the award committee was maybe how well-rounded my experience was. At the high school I was serving at the time, I'd launched new initiatives like a father-son book club, a summer reading book club, free comic book day, a masked reader contest, and a weekly spot on the school broadcast called Library Picks of the Week. I recruited teachers across the curriculum to pitch in to share their love of reading in spots each week. And I very meticulously, labor of love, edit those spots together each and every week. It's a very time-consuming sort of thing. As you know from piecing it together, a podcast, editing, it takes a lot of time. And if you do it right, it looks like it's seamless. So I did that, and then students contributed to those spots, often in tie-ins to promote things like they were doing with theater or sports. And the goal was just to kind of foster the sense that there's this wide community of readers, whether or not people were reading as much as the optics we were hoping to present were, We just wanted the boys at the school to see that others were reading, and then hopefully that would build. Because, at a co-ed school, the girls tend to rub off on the guys a little bit in a positive sort of way. Whereas, at a male school, they might rub off on each other, but not necessarily in those kind of ways, especially with reading.
And building a culture of reading, it is guaranteed to be a question asked of every single candidate for any job that you ever apply for. As a school librarian, what do you plan to do to build reading culture? And friends, if you go to our playlist, we have an entire playlist called Reading Culture, because building reading culture takes time, it takes commitment, and it's not a one and done. As you discovered, it takes many different approaches to try and build that momentum and to get that kind of attention from not only your students, but your staff. You have to be fairly persistent to get the attention of teachers when it comes to the programming that we have in our spaces. And, that's not easy. And it becomes a priority that we set for ourselves. And, you play the long game, that's for sure. Tim, I imagine that when Kentucky was considering the candidates for School Librarian of the Year, in addition to building a culture of reading in your school, could you give us an idea of anything that really set you apart from the other people who were being considered that year for this award?
So something else was when I started at the school, the library space was dim and dusty, like literally dusty, and stuck somewhere in the 70s or 80s. So over 90% of the collection was outdated. The library was hardly ever used. Teachers had been scared away from the library by the previous librarian, like an old school, old guard librarian who protected their museum of books. So no collaboration was happening. It was a ghost town. So during my third year, I spearheaded a $200,000 renovation in the space that made the library the hub of the school. There was a new carpet, new paint, brought in student art so that students could feel ownership of the space, comfy furniture, a computer lab, a collaboration station, and better lighting. We had a maker space with 3D printers, makey, spheros, arts and crafts, whiteboards, Legos, even a guitar and ukulele. I convened a student library advisory board to offer suggestions during the entire process that year. That gave students ownership. They even got to select the fabric on the chairs.
Did you have to close the library at any time, or were they able to do these transformations during the break and during the summer? So you have all this student buy-in. When did this happen? Did you have to clear out of that space?
So during the year, most of that time was spent on the planning and also on a lot of weeding, because we had these old rickety shelves, and we were going to get rid of the shelves, of the old rickety shelves, and we were going to try to make the most of the space. This was a kind of a small space for the enrollment that we had. And so we invested heavily in ebooks, but also invested heavily in weeding what we did not need so that everything would fit perfectly. Updating the collection took several years. So it wasn't just like that year, but we did a lot of weeding that year. Eventually, we increased the age of the collection by 30 years. It was that out of date. And as a result of the renovation, we were just crowded, like in the mornings, at lunchtime, after school. We started having D&D clubs meet in there. It just became like the hot happening place. And then we added, as you might guess, we added hundreds of graphic novels, but we only had 3 total graphic novels when I arrived there. So that was a huge change. We had Mouse and Persepolis and one other thing I can't remember, which are great, but that's 2 or 3. I also invested, like I said, in ebooks and new databases. I developed our social media, and then we created a new library website. In 2021, my library website won the state's Outstanding School Library Media Website Award, and then the next year was when I won the State Librarian of the Year.
That's fantastic. Well, and I love that you got all that buy-in from your students, because it should be their space. They should have that kind of ownership and feel like this is their third space, that place where they can go and really feel at home. So I imagine your teachers were also equally grateful that you were able to bring this space into a wonderful update, and so that everybody could enjoy it.
Yeah, we had lots of teacher buy-in. I mean, I fostered that previous to the renovation with the Library Picks of the Week thing. That was kind of like a Band-Aid until we could get, things more updated. But then it went crazy after that. After the renovation, it was nuts. We had to, turn people away.
Well, and I liken our libraries oftentimes to the school's family room. And people should feel that welcome. They should feel that welcome to be there. So, and it's a credit to you to provide that kind of transformation and spearhead that, because it does have to be one person's sort of initiative in order for something of that scale to happen. I think that they made an excellent choice in picking you because of just how important that overhaul was to create that sense of community in the school.
Thank you so much. So I've also been consistently presenting at state and national conferences since around 2017, including AASL and ALA. Of course, you saw me as a vendor at AASL, but mostly presenting on graphic novels and media literacy. But I've also presented on social media strategies, on DEI, makerspaces, fostering male readers, self-care for librarians during the quarantine, and school library renovation tips. I'm sure all this also factored in being named a mover and shaker this year. I've also been very involved on the boards of my local and state library associations, serving on committees and contributing to newsletters. I was president of my local school library association, JCastle, during the COVID shutdown year. And that was a very trying time for everyone, but also personally, because that was the year my mom suddenly passed away. And so I made it a priority to try to spread positivity that year because I needed it as much as anybody, and promote inclusivity and expand our social media reach to do that since we could not meet in person. That positivity, the visibility, and increased inclusivity is one of the reasons our membership broke records that year.
Congratulations. That's fantastic.
Thank you. I will add on a down note that not everyone was a fan of the positivity and inclusivity.
Wait, you had people objecting to how positive you were?
Yes, so let me share. I received a piece of anonymous hate mail from Texas that year that I was almost scared to open when I found it in my mailbox. They come across an article in our school magazine about some of the changes I was making, and they'd scribbled all kinds of deranged, weird comments in the margins of the article. They'd ripped out from the magazine and mailed to me. So it was a little psycho. Here's one that they said: I don't know your demographics, but you're obviously a leftist, anti-American PC pusher who is on a power trip of change. They used the phrase power trip multiple times. They like that one, I guess.
So this is a person from Texas. Forgive
and I'm
me.
Kentucky. Yes.
You're in Kentucky. Why?
I have no idea.
Forgive me.
I have no idea.
I don't understand the need for somebody in Texas to police what's happening in your space.
I have no idea.
Nope. I don't see the connection.
It's confusing. Yeah.
Yeah. No. And you know what? I don't think your job is to try and impress anybody from Texas. Forgive me. No offense to y'all, Texas. But you have your immediate constituents. You have the people who are going to benefit from all this positivity and the joy that you bring in this space. And that includes your entire school community. And those are the only people who matter in this equation. And so I applaud you in your steadfast commitment to support your school community. And now your new school community are lucky to have you because you have clearly demonstrated that this is a passion that is all-encompassing when you come and you move into a space. It is clear and evident, and obviously these award committees have recognized that you are a worthy recipient.
Thank you so much.
It speaks volumes to you as a leader in the profession when these organizations are recognizing you for your leadership. This last one is NAMLE, the National Association for Media Literacy Education. And I'm so curious because this is a great place to get resources, but I didn't realize that they also recognize leaders in our profession for the work that we do, promoting media literacy in our classrooms and libraries.
Yes, and this award was a big surprise. I didn't know it really was out there until just very recently. This is my first national award, the second one being the Movers and Shakers one. I got the award largely for my work promoting how you can leverage the popularity of graphic novels to embed the teaching and media literacy skills. But through my business, Nimco Incorporated, I also helped to develop 2 eraselets with media literacy slogans on them. Again, like I mentioned, eraselets are bracelets that also work as erasers, which is a patent Nimco owns exclusive rights to, not to brag. But one slogan said, erase confirmation bias, seek multiple perspectives. And another said, erase misinformation, verify your sources. And after that, I couldn't come up with any more puns with the word erase. So those were the 2 that I came up with.
Well, and I love this. When you talk about media literacy and graphic novels, it ties in nicely because you were also a featured school librarian in DEMCO's School Library Planner this year. And friends, it is really fun, but Tim Jones is here on page 213. There's a link in the show notes if any of you are interested in ordering DEMCO's School Library Planner. Thank you, Christina Holzweiss, for spearheading this project every year. But Tim, you mention, first of all, and I know I'm jumping the gun here, but I look at your profile here, and the first thing you do is we're asked to pick a book that we'd recommend. You recommend, as your book recommendation, Anne Frank's Diary, the graphic adaptation, which was illustrated by David Polonsky and adapted by Ari Folman. Now, I have this book in my library. It gets checked out all the time. It's on my banned book display, actually, along with the what we call Anne Frank, the Diary of Anne Frank, a Diary of a Young Girl, and having the graphic novel version next to the diary, which she wrote. The first response I get from readers is, wait, how can you take something as sad as the Holocaust and make it into a graphic novel? And I'm like, hello, mouse, anyone? Graphic novel does not equate with funny. It's a format. So, but tell me, this is obviously an important book in your program, but you offer, for those of us who have our planner and those of us who are ordering the planner, link in show notes, teach media literacy through graphic novels. I'm going to ask you offer 10 ways to do this. This is fantastic. And again, one of the reasons to get the planner. But could I impose on you, would you share 1 or 2 of those strategies just for people who are listening? Because it's these types of teaching strategies which earned you the recognition by NAMLE being the Teacher of the Year for 2023. But could you share with us a strategy that you've included and incorporate into your teaching when it comes to graphic novels?
Yeah, so one idea would be first of all, to really be able to do this, your students have to have an idea of basic terms in graphic novels. And there are 6 major ones, but I'm going to only talk about a few. Panels are the little boxes that the action is happening in, and then the space in between the panels is called the gutter. And so that's all I'll get into in terms of right now. So one lesson or activity I might do is have students fill in what happens in that gutter between one panel and the second panel. Because that gutter is where time lapses, or it might be a jump from in place. So it's a jump in time or place between those 2 panels. And so the creator of those panels has a reason for why they're making that jump. Is it so that they can get to a zoom? Is it a zoom in on a character? Is it so they can move in time and place? Why are they leaving out certain parts and only including certain other ones? And so by having students really think about what's there in between the gutter, possibly, and making some inferences, they can start to think about media literacy in that way too, in terms of when you see a news broadcast or a TV show or TikTok, those cuts, why are we seeing what we're seeing versus what we're not seeing, and to really be thinking critically about the media. So that's one particular lesson.
I've got to imagine it is using graphic novels allows you to focus on a content which, forgive me, right now it is late August and we are in the midst of a presidential election. And it is as tempting as it would be to use the news to teach media literacy. The polarization that's happening here in this country, I would be, I'm speaking as a former social studies teacher, it would be very difficult for me to use the news for media literacy right now without sparking a great deal of tension and discord in a classroom if we were to use the news to teach, lessons that didn't then break out into some sort of argument, which might take us off the rails. I don't mean to be, I love the idea of using graphic novels because there is a better chance that you are not going to create that hostility in the classroom if we start to talk, especially during an election year, and in this case, an election year that as contentious and ugly as it is right now here in the United States.
I totally agree, and so I think it's a tamer way to approach it, and it's a more popular way because kids love graphic novels. I've been presenting on graphic novels for many years at the national level, and presenting on media literacy at the national level for many years, and it had only been in the last 2 or 3 years that I started to marry the two concepts when I saw that one is very related to the other, and maybe subconsciously I was attracted to both themes primarily, but yes, it's a very contentious environment we're in, and I would say if you're going to use a news segment for media literacy purposes, to know your audience, and also to maybe if you need to use a more benign news segment, maybe that's something that's not national politics, but something maybe that's more local. That I think that might be the way to go for some. Just know your audience. Yeah.
Oh, no, absolutely. And it is, we want to make sure that we are able to teach our students, but we also have to do so in a way that our students don't ever feel targeted or under attack or put on the defensive. So it is, and again, our students are oftentimes, so often, little mirrors, little reflections of the culture they've been raised in. So, you've moved now to the elementary level. I have to ask, you've obviously had to customize your media literacy lessons for a much younger group of students. Is there a particular media literacy lesson that you like to do with your younger students?
I'm so new at my elementary school that to be honest, I have not done as much media literacy with them as I would like to. I have plans this year for bringing more in, but I will talk about a media literacy lesson I did with them last year that I did get to do. I would love to just embed it constantly, but here's one that I did last year where I showed them. I don't know if you're familiar with Garfield.
Yes. Some of us of a certain age.
Yes.
But yes, the reading the colored comics on the weekends. Right. Yes. Thank you very much.
But not everybody is familiar with Garfield minus Garfield. You might be. I don't know, but not everybody is. And so Garfield minus Garfield is what it sounds like. So there was a webcomic several years ago. I don't know how many years ago it's been, but somebody decided they were going to take actual panels from Garfield and they were just going to erase Garfield from the panels, but keep John Arbuckle, keep everything else, keep the word balloons and everything. And it by removing Garfield, it just seems like John Arbuckle is just talking to himself and is having an existential crisis 100% of the time. And it's sad, and it's funny, and it's poignant, and it's all the things, and it's amazing. And so even though, it's K through 5, I didn't show my K through 2 kids maybe this as much because they didn't maybe get it as much. But my 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, I showed them the original Garfield comic, which, they're not of our age, but they're still familiar with Garfield. And then I then showed them the Garfield minus Garfield and had them to analyze and share with their tables and with us as a class, like, how did that change the meaning by erasing a whole entire perspective, including like the main character's perspective. What happens when you focus more on, this one particular character, and how does that change things? Or when you in one of the panels, like they even had erased an entire board balloon, so it changed the meaning. Also, what John Arbuckle was saying, that was a really great, safe way to present media literacy to them through comics. So that was one way, and I'm hoping to do more this year.
So I'm awfully curious. I love PBS. I love watching their shows. You've been recognized by your local PBS station for your excellence in education?
I guess so.
Do tell. How did this happen? You are a KET Education All Star. I was like, of course. Your public television has recognized you as an outstanding educator.
Yes, so this is a newer initiative. KET is a state affiliate of PBS, and basically they selected about 20-something educators across the state. Some are librarians, some do preschool, some do adult education. So it's all kinds of different educators. And we try to represent their many educational resources, including their social studies shorts, their SEL resources. They have a Young Writers Contest, PBS Learning Media. There's a news quiz show that can use along with a quiz to make sure that students are understanding what the information they're learning in the news quiz. There's an arts toolkit. You can do Kentucky field trips. There's just so much more resources through that. And so because the ones who were nominated had already done so much in terms of presenting at multiple conferences or being innovative in other ways or being recognized in other ways, they felt we would be great ambassadors for their resources because we had already started to use some of them and talk about them. So it's a 2-year kind of program, and then I will move off, and then I will be, I guess, an alum.
It isn't surprising that graphic novels are important to Tim's collection. I'm curious, how have you incorporated those graphic novels into the lessons that you teach?
That's a great question. The two main approaches that I take are showing students panels to analyze and challenging students to draw their own comics using prompts. With both approaches, they're challenged to think about the creator's intent and persuasive techniques. So, for example, I might challenge students to create a comic telling the story of a background character in a narrative the class has read or is reading that helps students consider perspectives that are being left out. Or I might challenge students to incorporate a character in their comic who, quote, breaks the fourth wall, to comment on the technique the student artist is using to create a desired effect. So those are just a couple of different examples.
I love it. And it also does draw upon students' skills and interpreting what they see and being able to create a better understanding because of the visual. It's a different type of interpretation because you're using visuals instead of reading words. So let me ask you, you are famous for employing viral moments and pop culture in your media literacy lessons. And I understand that to some extent you have to customize that to the age of your students. So as you have changed from being in the high school, and now you're in the elementary, some things may translate, but other things don't.
That's right. So I will give you a few examples. So when I was at the high school and I did library picks of the week, I would regularly try to bring in as many pop culture references as I could. So like every Halloween, we would do like a Halloween special and promote certain horror books. And so the last one that we did was the newest Scream movie had come out. So I did a lot of cuts back and forth between some things that were parodying Ghostface and some of the questions he was asking, like do you like scary stories? And then that would then transition into actual scary stories like books. So that was one thing I did. Another example is I've challenged high school students to find a recent Super Bowl ad and adapt it into a comic strip by distilling the ad down to like 6 to 8 panels, more or less if they wanted to do it, a different way. I wanted to give them some flexibility, but that features some of the advertising techniques that we had studied. More recently, at the elementary school I'm at, I produced a TikTok of myself with my cat, reenacting the Time Person of the Year cover with Taylor Swift and her cat. And my daughter orchestrated the photo shoot. We're both Swifties. I then replaced Taylor with myself on various covers using Canva and increasing levels of distress and turned them into a TikTok. And this was real distress because the cat was distressed and was all up over my head. You can see it on my TikTok at the Mr. Library. The kids who didn't find the TikTok to be cringe, they loved it. I then did photo shoots with the kids posing in the exact same angles as Taylor Swift with a stuffed cat. Not like a taxidermy cat, but like, a stuffed animal cat.
Stuffed animal. Yes, a stuffy. Yes,
and we had a lot of fun. It would have been less fun with a taxidermy cat. I'll just say that. Yeah,
yes.
But,
no, I completely agree. There's the time and the place to bring in taxidermy. This is not it. Not it. I did have a guest once tell me, and I please don't ask me who it was, but they had a stuffed taxidermy owl, and it came with the library. They were not allowed to get rid of it. It was kind of like a mascot. I'm like, it's a dead bird in your library, and it would not do well in any space of mine. I first met you at a conference, and I thought you were a vendor, and then I was like, oh, you are a vendor, but wait, you're a school librarian. No, you're both. And so, this is really wonderful because you have been able to sort of have this balance between two worlds as a business owner and as a school librarian. And you found a nice way to really sort of bring those two passions together. And I'm hoping you can explain a little bit about the business that you have and how being a library has come to be a very important part of that.
Yes, it's definitely a blend and it's a balance. And I'll just say right off the top of my head, it is a hard balance. It's a lot because I feel like if I'm doing one injustice, I'm doing the other injustice, and I feel like they both are competing. So it's hard trying to juggle both. So my company is called Nimco Incorporated. My dad founded the company 40 years ago to produce and sell various awareness-themed products. For example, we are the official supplier of Red Ribbon Week, the anti-drug awareness week celebrated in schools across the country. I became a co-owner a few years ago. Our ties to school libraries go back to 1987 when Nimco won the Jesse Stewart Award from the Castle Association of School Librarians for our production promoting the state of Kentucky. So long before I won my award for School Librarian of the Year from that association, my dad beat me to winning an award from the association. So more recently, I've been spearheading the design of library advocacy swag through Nimco, and because we've got to tell our stories every way we can, and I think swag is a fun way to do that.
I completely agree. So let me ask you, when it comes to being at a conference, you are a school librarian, but you're also behind, the table, you're working the table. You have an opportunity to connect with library professionals from all over the country. Let me ask, what are the kinds of things that you find school librarians enjoy purchasing from your company?
Well, they love the shirts. So, like with most librarians, I just love library swag, and I can't have enough library shirts. And the people who come to our booth would say very similar things. I can have too many tote bags, though. I will say that. I only need like one or two, but not enough shirts. I can wear a shirt every day of the week, and then 2 on Saturday. At the same time, I had a lot of ideas for new shirt designs that had more flavor. That maybe were a little edgier. At AASL 23, if you remember this, librarians and tattoo artists shared the same venue, and we got together for a group photo at the end. So many librarians have tattoos. I don't, but A lot do. So we're an edgier demographic than sometimes the merch out there give us credit for. At the same time, libraries had been under attack the last few years with the book bans and funding and all kinds of other hits. So I was inspired to produce some products that were inclusive, a little edgy, and that spread a little joy. And so my first step was to generate as many ideas for library shirt designs and slogans as I could. And I finally stopped around 50. At Second City, they train you to just come up with ideas. Just come up with ideas, and then don't be afraid to, kill ideas that are important to you. And so I came up with ideas, even if I knew that they may not make the list. I just wanted to throw a lot of ideas against the wall and see what would stick. I then recruited librarians for 2 rounds of focus groups to offer feedback on what appealed to them more. Because I had an idea, but I'm not every librarian, and I'm just one white male. So I only have a very specific perspective. So based on that first round of feedback, our Nimco graphic design team mocked up the most popular designs. And then we got feedback from a second round of focus group on the mock designs, and we made our final cuts before going to print. And some of the slogans that didn't make the cut for shirts, we adapted into other products. ASL 23 was our first foray into selling library merch, and the traffic at our booth never slowed down. At the TLA conference this last year in April, the vendor next to our booth told me afterwards, after we'd all shut down, that Nimco was doing great work because so many librarians dropped by our booth, and they were so excited about our shirts and how they made them feel. And that's a good feeling for me. A few months ago, Georgia librarian Robin Thompson, I believe you had her on a guest on this podcast recently. Go back and check that out. It was an awesome podcast. She tweeted out a selfie of her wearing one of our shirts that made me get a little teary-eyed. She was wearing our shirt that reads, "Libraries are for everyone" in 12 different languages. And she shared how a Korean student of hers felt seen when he saw the phrase in his language, and his eyes lit up. And I'm tagged on a lot of social media like that one, but I think that's a first tweet I've ever been, or X post, whatever it is now, the first post that I've ever seen that I got teary-eyed about. Still, that I had something to do with impacting some student in some other library that is not mine, and I can make them feel seen. And so I'm tagged on social media all the time when librarians are wearing our product. It's a really nice feeling.
Well, and friends, we're going to definitely include a link in the show notes. And what I love is that you recognize the value of other people's feedback, and that when you go to produce something, it reflects not just one idea, but a process of working through a whole bunch of ideas, and you're getting that kind of feedback from other people, and you're more likely to really come up with some fantastic finished products because you've taken other people's feedback into consideration. I absolutely love that. Yes, friends, we are going to include a link in the show notes. It is fun. Obviously, your website is up year-round. We can see you at conferences when we're lucky, but we can shop. Let me ask you, when it comes to Red Ribbon Week, I know that that's in October. If listeners wanted to order Red Ribbon Week materials for their program to arrive in enough time, what would the turnaround, what would you recommend in terms of placing an order in particular, because that's a timing issue?
Yes, I mean, I think this podcast drops August 23rd. Is that right?
Absolutely.
So as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Because by beginning of October, that stuff starts to ship out.
Mm-hmm.
I would talk to your school's counselor or their family resource coordinator, or whoever it is at your school who orders those supplies. I think it depends on your school. If they used a promo code Library24, all caps, no spaces, when they order $100 or more online, Nimco will throw in a cool free library advocacy shirt. You heard that right.
No. Listen, I've got a sponsorship I have to promote. I just don't do it during our conversation. So no, you go ahead. Because, and again, I think what's important is Red Ribbon Week that would likely come out of a budget that's not the library. That's going to be coming out of your SEL funds. You could pay for that with any number of funds, including state money, including federal money. So talk to your counselors, talk to your school psychologist, school therapist. You have a whole bunch of other money you can tap when it comes to Red Ribbon Week. And the nice thing is that you can set them up with that. But again, many of our schools are just now getting back into the swing of things and start to tap those people.
So our website is nimcoinc.com. And again, that promo code works regardless of whether you're ordering Red Ribbon Week supplies. You could also buy $100 of library swag and get a free shirt. So long as you use that promo code on orders of $100 or more, that's library24 at nimcoinc.com. Also, what I love, one more thing. What I love about this year's Red Ribbon Week theme is that it also ties nicely into media literacy. The theme is Life as a Movie, Film Drug-Free. So to promote media literacy and spread anti-drug awareness, librarians could collaborate with teachers to challenge students to script, storyboard, and film PSAs. Or students could work in groups to research and present on celebrities, athletes, or other public figures who have struggled with and or overcome drug addiction. Lots of options. So I love this year's theme, which again is Life as a Movie, Film Drug-Free.
Excellent. Listen, Tim, I'm so grateful that you are part of my PLN. If there are listeners out there who would like to add you to their PLN, we know you're on TikTok as Mr. Library, but where else can they find you on social media?
All right. So please follow me on X, formerly Twitter, at Mr. Library, and on Instagram, Blue Sky, TikTok, and Threads at the Mr. Library. It never fails. I'll see something kooky on X and someone spreading this information, and then I'll check their profile, and they have tens or hundreds of thousands of followers. I don't know if you've noticed that. Probably a lot of them are bots, but I'm just like, how did they get so many? I have only 1,350 on X at the moment. It just seems just a little disproportionate. So follow me on all the socials, please.
Excellent. And friends, we'll make sure to put those in the show notes. Tim Jones, you are wonderful. I'm so grateful you were able to join us. And thank you so much for all the helpful resources you provided in your show notes. And I hope you have a fantastic day at school tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Friends, if you found this episode helpful, please share it out with your team, your PLN, and on social media. Be sure to follow on your favorite podcatcher so you'll never miss an episode. And if you really like listening today, consider leaving a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Reviews help others find us. Now is a great time to order DEMCO School Library Planner and use the code UNITED to take advantage of Capstone's generous $20 discount off an order of $100 or more. See the links in today's show notes. The topic of our next episode will be Middle School Manifesto and my conversation with Marcia Koschel. I hope you will tune in.